Good evening and welcome to the Atlantis Bookshop Presents An Evening With, which is the first of our new series of events, obviously starting this year. We were the Moot with no name, but we had an evil pact with Steve Wilson, who started the Moot, that if we got Alan Moore to speak, then we could change the name. And so it's an evening, we present An Evening With now. And in this case, it's David Farrant, who at long last is speaking for us, really. So we're very, very pleased about that. And I'll hand you over to Steve to do a proper introduction.
Going back to those heady days, I mean, I was only 12 when the summer of love came along. And within a couple of years, I was reading everything, UFOs, Loch Ness Monster, you name it. But they were all over the world. There was something that was happening in London. I was just too young to get involved in. I really wish I'd actually been in central London at the time, or could have afforded the fares. And this was the mystery of the Highgate Vampire. I can tell you a great deal about what I remember, but what's the point? Because tonight we've got with us the person who was at the heart of the investigation of that mystery. Can I please have a big round of applause for David Farrant?
This is going to be in the form of an interview, David being interviewed by me. Clearly the first question is, do you believe in vampires?
No.
Now this makes the whole involvement in the vampire case a rather strange thing, therefore.
It's been very misunderstood, but I have never ever said, right from the onset, that I actually did believe in vampires.
Right. Do you believe in sort of supernatural entities?
Well, yes, that's a different matter.
Right.
I believe in a certain types of, shall we say, supernatural entities that can remain earthbound, and they're often described, I don't like the word, but they're often described as ghosts or things like that. And in turn, ghosts can be divided into many different categories. I won't go into that because it's too complicated, but I certainly don't believe in blood-sucking vampires as the type of people associate with a horror movie. The answer to your question is no, I do not believe in vampires.
So, clearly, without going into too much detail in this point, since it goes on, there's a lot more to say, how come an investigation you're associated with came to be called a vampire?
I didn't call it a vampire. That was how the press labelled it. And neither did I start that particular vampire hunt. I think the one you're referring to took place in March 1970, when quite a few hundred people converged on Highgate Cemetery after watching a TV programme. Somebody on that programme informed the ITV public that I intended to return to Highgate Cemetery that same evening to search out the king vampire of the undead. And he told the programme that my intention was, when I found it, I was going to drive a wooden stake through its heart. Now, I never said any of that. By this time, rumours that the ghost was some sort of vampire had been circulating locally to a huge degree. I do remember saying to some local reporter a week before that he said to me, I said to him, I was humouring him, and I said, if it turns out to be anything like a vampire, I will take whatever means are necessary so that we can all rest in peace. That got reported in the newspaper, which was in turn misinterpreted by this person on the television.
All right, I do want to deal mainly with sort of slightly later stuff, but we need to sort of backtrack slightly. And as I understand it, you don't like the word ghost, you did believe that there was a ghost there. Can you explain that briefly?
I actually witnessed something in Highgate Cemetery myself back in 69. It was in December 69. It took the form of a tall figure, and it was standing just inside the north gate. That's the top gate of Highgate Cemetery. And almost just as quickly, it disappeared. It just wasn't there. I had actually gone to Highgate Cemetery to try and look for some logical explanation, because by this time it had been reported or witnessed by quite a few other local people. Very quickly, my intention was to, I actually thought it could be a tree branch, the branches blowing in the wind, casting a shadow across Swains Lane. Well, I even thought that it could have been connected with foxes, because foxes used to breed in Highgate Cemetery, and they still do. An animal that had been distorted out of all proportion and got turned into a ghost and that sort of thing. I didn't know what I was looking for, but it was a logical explanation. Yes, I witnessed it. This was in December 1969.
All right, well, let's jump on a few years to June of 1974 when you were put on trial at the Old Bailey. And there were various charges such as desecration of graves, possession of a revolver, and stealing bedclothes from Farrant General Hospital. Not all quite on the same scale.
2 sheets of blanket and a pillowcase, to be exact.
All right. So, well, starting off with a revolver, I understand this, what was said about it, or what was it?
Look, when the police took me to court eventually in 1974, I think we should all remember, at that time in the 20th century, the Metropolitan Police were notoriously famous for setting people up. It was only years later, where after a big report, that they actually changed the law, meaning that people that were being interviewed by the police had to have a solicitor present if they wanted one, and they had to be tape recorded. I didn't have any of that. I just had 2 police officers who were hell-bent out to get a conviction, my conviction. And they had in those days what we call verbal evidence. That means that you didn't have to be tape recorded, you didn't have to have a solicitor present. In fact, you often weren't allowed to have a solicitor present. The police could attribute statements to yourself or any other person they wanted, which amounted to confessions of guilt. Now, these confessions were read out in court. They were given in evidence by police officers, and they were made admissible in court. That is what happened in my case. I was supposed to have confessed to 2 offences of vandalism at Highgate Cemetery. I was supposed to have confessed to sending 2 voodoo refugees to 2 police officers. Well, I did that. I mean, I sent them by recorded delivery. I never denied that. I'm talking about the offences at Highgate Cemetery. There were 2 cases of vandalism, one quite a serious one. And I denied making these statements. I fought the case myself in court, and I proved to the jury that this particular police officer was lying, because I was found not guilty of the 3 main charges.
Now, let's go back to the revolver. What was it that they said you said about it?
They found a Smith & Wesson revolver in a canvas holster, and in the holster was 1 bullet. The gunner, on the inside of the canvas holder, was a name, ink, R.D. Farrant. It was his army gun, And he obviously hadn't handed it in at the end of the
He's
year.
only going in your fathers.
Yes, because he was in the army.
Yeah.
When the police found the gun, on that charge, the inspector actually stood up at the Old Bailey and said before Judge Argyle, who's now dead, he was asked by Judge Argyle why I had the gun, and he said to Judge Argyle, I told him I had the gun, I was keeping the one bullet because I intended to shoot the Highgate Vampire. Now that was made admissible in court. It was obviously a load of nonsense. I actually ended up getting a fine for that.
Yeah, you're really lucky because you get a definite prison sentence for possession of a gun now. I take it actually you just keep it because it was a family heirloom.
Yes. That is the only reason. I know you're dying to ask me about those sheets, aren't you?
Yeah.
I was living with a nurse, a live-in nurse, who worked at Farrant General Hospital. And I was having a lot of confusion about that. I was only going out with the nurse, and she had a room in the nurse's home at Farrant General Hospital. The sheets and the pillowcase and the towels were issued to her as part of her wages. She used to stay at my flat in Highgate, maybe 2 or 3 days at a time, on different days to coincide with her shift. And she used to bring sheets to my flat, and when the sheets were being used, she took them back and put them in the hospital laundry. Now I said that in court, which is the truth. The sheets case was heard after the Highgate Cemetery case. Now the Highgate Cemetery case, as it was going along, due to all these outrageous statements being made by the police about vampires and sex orgies and nude orgies and black magic and that I practiced Satanism, which I was supposed to have said to the police, they brought out the matter of the sheets. But all these statements had attracted sensational publicity. So by the time I went to court to face this rather minor charge of the sheets, the jury would have read all this in the Sunday papers and the national papers. And I really didn't stand much of a chance. I said that in court. And the judge, Argyle, asked me to name the nurse. I refused point blank, and I also told him why. She was just about getting ready to take her exams to be a staff nurse. If I'd have named that girl, although she wasn't actually doing anything wrong, at least I don't think it's wrong at all, it's just a technical thing, it would have ruined her career. That's the reason I didn't name her. So the Argyle instructed the jury that if my story was true, why had I not named the girl? More or less telling the jury to find they had no choice but to find the guilty, which is exactly what they did. They had 2 charges, they couldn't make up their minds. One charge was of theft, an alternative charge was receiving stolen property. So I'm sorry to disappoint you, that's all there is to that.
Alright. Now, there certainly was a lot of vandalism at Highgate Cemetery.
That's putting it mildly. And we're not talking about mild vandalism, we're not talking about people knocking out flower vases over, we're not talking about them painting or chalking on the walls. We're talking about heavy duty vandalism. People were going into Highgate Cemetery, smashing open the old Victorian vaults. In some cases, lead was completely missing from the coffin. And when all this nonsense about the vampire started on the television, people were actually going in there, rather lunatics, I prefer to call them, and actually putting stakes through the corpses in the coffins, all encouraged by the statements that this particular person had made on the television, or a particular person whom I shall not name at the moment.
You said you wanted
Oh, yes. I deliberately brought this with me. I've marked the page. Would you mind reading it out?
Okay, this is from Rotten, the biography of John Lydon. Speaking of this period, about 1973, it says, he mentions a photograph of himself standing outside Highgate Cemetery, and so how his friends Dave Crow and John Gray were interested in the vampire story. He says, during that summer period when we were about 16 or 17 and I was going to school in Hackney, we'd break into the crypts where the bodies were on shelves, open up the coffins and have a look. We'd see which bodies hadn't deteriorated. Was this vampire thing real? So many people were doing it, it was almost like a social club down there. You meet so many people, loonies mostly, running around with wooden stakes, crucifixes and cloves of garlic. We'd get bored with that, there'd be a pub at the top of the road and we'd drink a bit and then go back into the crypts later that night. Well, there you've got the names of 3 people who were doing it, who certainly never got into trouble because one for that.
Yes, and he's never denied it either.
Now, the most serious charge against you, I believe, is that you have gone into a vault, taken out the very long dead body of a woman, decapitated it, and left the body in the driving seat of a nearby car, whose owner is apparently told the press later, I should have known this would happen if I left my car unlocked.
Let's be absolutely clear about it, Gareth. That was the original main charge against me. Putting a skeleton, incidentally the so-called, it wasn't a body as such, it was a 150-year-old skeleton. I understand the coffin had already been opened by vandals. They propped it up behind the driver's seat, although it was actually driving the car. It was obviously a joke. Now, when I was at the Old Bailey, the police officer in charge of that case attributed statements to me. There was no other evidence. Basic evidence was that I'm supposed to have said to him, putting it, look, he wouldn't understand, putting it in the car wasn't intended. Somebody came along and we had to make off, or something worse to that effect. Now that's what he read out in court. I never said that. I never signed anything like that. That was how that trial went. That was the main charge against me. And let me add, I was acquitted of that charge. The jury didn't believe I made those statements.
What was your defence anyway?
Well, my simple defence that I hadn't been responsible for it. Yeah. And also, as it turned out, when I was on remand in Pentonville prison, there was an armed robber in there. I think I can name him because his name has been in the newspapers. He was called Anthony Field, and he actually approached me in the prison and he said that, I know you didn't take that headless, but it hadn't gone to court yet, it hadn't gone to trial. He said, because we did it. What had happened was there was a group of them had gone up to Highgate Cemetery, or rather into Highgate Cemetery one evening. They'd taken the corpse out of it, they'd found an open vault. This is the evidence he gave in court. One of the people who was actually said in court, he saw one of the people dancing with the skeleton. Somehow in the process it had lost its head, its skull. But he admitted that it was him and these other people had just done it for alarm, because he didn't want to see me convicted of something an offence I hadn't committed.
That's another thing people don't think of when they read hit these serious bits of vandalism. People were just having a joke.
A lot of the time it was. It could be put down to pranks. and just mild vandalism, but a lot of it was really heavy, serious stuff.
What I meant was people having heavy, serious jokes.
As long as they're not like your jokes, I don't mind them. It's no offences. I just can't stand his jokes.
Anyway, so what was the sentence?
What the sentence?
What were you
I
convicted?
was acquitted.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, you were found guilty of some of the offences.
I was found guilty of 2 offences at Highgate Cemetery. Acquitted of the 3 main charges. Found guilty of 2 which were only introduced quite near the end, before my trial. I had gone into Highgate. The police found excuse me. A picture in my flat of myself. In fact, there were 2 or 3 pictures of myself standing over an open coffin, which you could see quite easily the lid had been torn off it, shining a torch into this coffin. I think one other pictures, they're all from the same set, there were 4 or 5, showed me holding a Bible and a crucifix over the coffin. All that had happened was I had been invited, I think it's 71, by a reporter to go to Highgate Cemetery because he was doing an article, please excuse me, I think it was for Titbits magazine, and he was doing an article on vampirism. Asked me to go to the cemetery in the daytime to get some photographs to illustrate the article. We found this great big maze of catacombs open, it's known as terraced catacombs. This coffin had already been broken open, and all the lead was missing off the top. He took some pictures of me there, and the police found the pictures in my flat some years in 1974, in connection, when they raided my flat, in connection with the body in the car charge. It was headlined by the press. They found these pictures. I explained in court what had happened. I said I was with a reporter who was doing an article which was actually published in Titbits magazine. And I'd also used one of his pictures in a local paper for an article I wrote for the Leeds Lincoln Gazette about the dangers of Satanism. But again, the judge, I had my best clothes on. I was standing by the coffin, well, not best clothes, but I certainly didn't have jeans on, that sort of thing. Judge Argyle, I said in court, we found the coffin in that state. Now the police called William Law, who was a prosecution witness for the police. I examined him in the witness box, and it turned out that Law said he was often putting coffins away in that vault. He also stated in evidence, that the lead was missing from the lid at the top of the coffin, and he also stated in evidence that when he came to put that coffin away, the skeleton inside was completely untouched. Now this is important. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is very important. The judge ruled to the jury, said that if Mr. Farrant so much as touched or moved that coffin whilst being photographed, that constitutes interference and the charge can be made out. That was Judge Argyle for you. I got found guilty and he gave me 2 years for that offence, which I did not commit.
Right, it actually sounds like the work of lead thieves rather than that.
There were also a group of lead thieves used to operate in Highgate Cemetery, yes.
Right. So, what was the total number of years that you got sentenced to?
4 years, 8 months.
Just want to, now another point though, there were certain stories about in the press both before and during and after the trial. You mentioned one or two things that actually didn't lead to charges. It was alleged flatly that you used to sacrifice cats, which I would have thought, if they were trying to fix every charge on you, they would have tried to accuse you of that if they could find any evidence.
I was never accused of sacrificing a cat except by the press and certain other people who were trying to train me as a Satanism and black magician. All that happened there was boxing Long John Baldry. I think he died a couple of years ago. He used to live in Muswell Hill, and his pet cat, whom he called Stoopsy, went missing. And this was at the time, though, when all these stories were in the Sunday press about myself being involved in nude orgies, being involved in Satanism, you name it, it was in the press. He heard all these stories, and it also came out that we were actually conducting rituals in Highgate Wood.
Did those involve nude orgies?
No, but they were involved in, they were to do with Wicca. Wicca is a fertility religion, and in the summer, well, it's possible, some people do it in the winter, meetings, it's preferable to hold meetings outdoors because it's ruled by the lunar cycle, and obviously the moon only comes out at night, visibly at least. And they put great emphasis on the power of the moon. I won't go into that, it's a very complicated thing, if I could start getting onto Wicca. But we used to use Highgate Woods, but we didn't use to sacrifice cats, and we did not used to conduct nude orgies. They were just small meetings. When Baldry's cat went missing, he immediately assumed that the evil David Farrant had sacrificed it. That's what they told the press. That's what Baldry told the Daily Express and the Orange Journal. And of course, it caused a public outcry. What happened, when I had a libel action against the Daily Express in 1979, 1980, there was a hung, I couldn't reach a decision, I had to go back again. There were 2 libel cases, one against the News of the World and 2 against the Daily Express. The Daily Express called Long John Baldry as a defence witness, because obviously in the libel case, I'm the plaintiff, they were defence. I conducted that case on my own, and when Baldry came into the witness box, I'd previously heard a story, a rumour, that his cat had come back. So I just challenged him directly. I said, Mr. Baldry, there seems to be a story being put around that although your cat went missing, it in fact returned. Is that or is that not true? He said, yes, it came back about 2 weeks later. It had gone, the cat had apparently gone off. It was a male cat doing whatever cats do, looking for a female cat to have some little kittens or something like that. I don't know. But the point is, when I asked Baldry that in court, I said, but why in that case did you not inform the press? Why did you not inform the Hornsey Journal and the Daily Express that my cat has returned unharmed? He replied to me from the witness box. He said, well, to tell you the truth, I was so pleased to get the cat back, I didn't think it was that important. Hence, that's how that story started and escalated because of the press. And certain other people are still trying to put that story around at this present time.
And then his story was that you were somehow, in some obscure way, responsible for the suicide of Baldry's friend Graham Bond, who threw himself on the front of the tube train at Finsbury Park, just slightly before his trial.
I'm aware of that story. It's been in books like that. About sort of pop culture. Graham Bond was a practicing magician. Somebody sent Long John Baldry 2 or 1 voodoo doll, and he assumed that it was myself. It wasn't. I did send 2 voodoo effigies to the police for a very, very good reason, and as I said to you, I signed those, sent them recorded delivery, and each effigy had a note. What should you buy me a drink?
Doombar.
Extra cold Guinness, please.
You made me forget my question now. What are you asking?
Graham
Graham
Bond.
Bond.
And Baldry received
2 voodoo effigies, or 1, I think, 1. I was just saying that while I didn't deny sending voodoo effigies to the police, I did, and I sent them by recorded delivery. And they also had 2 notes in them saying, those who harm the initiated will become a victim of their own intentions. Your evil will be returned to you before another month is through. In truth, David Farrant. I signed them, sent to the police. I got 2 years for it. The whole point I'm making is if I sent that effigy to London Baldry, I would admit it, but I didn't send it. I know who did send it. And it wasn't myself.
Then again, you could hardly expect to prove in the court of law that his suicide was actually as a result of him sort of having tried to exercise these effigies.
Baldry, after he received his effigy or effigies, he called in Graham Bond to exorcise them, if you like. And Graham Bond ground them to powder and some magical spells over them. Baldry said he felt some terrible malignant presence had been lifted from his house after Graham Bond performed this so-called exorcism. And Graham Bond jumped under a tube train at Finsbury Park Station, and when they found him, he had a protective white magic emblem symbol around his neck. The Daily Express in 1974 more or less accused me of being responsible for Graham Bond's death. Hence the purpose of my libel action in 1981, when I took the Daily Express to court for libel. That was the main ground.
Did you succeed?
No.
Well, that could explain why some people sort of still seem to think. I'm not sure if it's you responsible. I've heard people talking about the case in any way.
I saw Graham Bond a couple of days before he died, and he wasn't in any kind of great shape at all. And I was surprised that he went under a tube track, really, but he was in a funny space, really, altogether. But he didn't seem depressed when I last saw him, but, you know, he had various reasons, chemical reasons for not feeling that bad at times, I think. And, but no, he was a nice guy in my experience.